Our French President Emmanuel Macron has called for concrete changes to the global lending system as the new Global Financial Pact Summit kicks off in Paris.
In order to succeed and to fix together poverty, climate change, biodiversity, it's absolutely impossible to do it just with public money and official development assistance. So we have to create a collective dynamic, and we need much more from the private sector, much more from the sovereign funds, the asset managers, and all the private money you can channel towards precisely these objectives.
President Macron will be leading the summit with Barbados Prime Minister Motley, who has emerged as a key figure in the fight against climate change.
I ask us today not to leave Paris without understanding that the bolstering of the political ambition that is required must secure transformation and not reform. And I ask us to ensure that those of us who are heads of government and heads of state recognize that the world cannot continue in the shadow of an old imperial order that does not see countries, does not feel countries, does not hear countries, and worse, does not see, feel, or hear people.
And Ross Cullen joins us live from Paris. Ross, more than 50 heads of state at this meeting. Can we expect any concrete outcome?
Well, we heard from Motley there just in the introduction, the Barbados Prime Minister, real firepower speech from her during the opening session of this summit for a new global financial pact. She was saying that we cannot just mark the card. She said that there needs to be action, not some point in the future in weeks or months. There needs to be action taken today so we can see results tomorrow. And she doesn't mean that kind of broadly in the rhetoric. She means tomorrow, Friday. She is very strong on this drive to try to have action at last in terms of supporting poverty reduction, supporting the fight against climate change, supporting the increased protection and preservation of biodiversity. Real kind of that speech really set the tone. And we also heard from President Macron, the host. You played a short soundbite of him from the introduction. The summit is well underway. We have lots of heads of state here, from President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. President Lula of Brazil is here. Number 2 in China, Li Qiang, the premier. We can touch on his visit a little bit more in a minute. But there are leaders from across Africa, Latin America, Asia, the Caribbean as well, really trying to show that they are also the stakeholders in this drive to improve and reform the financing model for countries in the global south, so developing and emerging economies.
Ross, since you mentioned the Chinese Premier Li Qiang meeting his French counterpart Elizabeth Borne earlier today, also meeting the president later. Apart from climate financing talks, given that this is a chance for them to talk shop, could they find anything else to talk about on the agenda?
Yeah. So this has come after that high-level meeting between Emmanuel Macron and Xi Jinping in China in April. Now it's the chance for the two prime ministers, Elizabeth Borne as the host here in France and Li Qiang on his first visit to France since taking over the Chinese premiership. They have held a working lunch at the Prime Minister's office and residence, Hotel Matignon, just to the south of the French centre, the other side of the river from the Élysée Palace, which is the French presidential office and residence. That's his next destination. Li Qiang headed there for bilateral talks one-on-one with Emmanuel Macron. No doubt they will continue those bilateral relations that were discussed at presidential level when Xi met Macron in China. But there will also be a chance to expand out, as you mentioned, away from just the climate financing summit to speak about specific Paris-Beijing relations. Emmanuel Macron has been speaking recently about improving the support system around Ukraine's bid for NATO membership. And no doubt the war in Ukraine will come up once again. That is always always top of the agenda when European leaders meet non-European leaders to try to expand the support base for supporting Ukraine in fighting off the Russian aggression. That's likely to come up, as well as the broader climate summit. There's a chance again for Emmanuel Macron to welcome Li Qiang to the Elysee Palace. They will also be discussing those key topics they regularly touch on, links between France and China in education, sports and culture.
Thanks for that. Ross Cullen joining us out of Paris.